Who wants to hit chip shots that finish nice and close to the hole? My guess is everybody. Well, give me a couple minutes and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. I'm PGA teaching professional Todd Cope, Director of Instruction for US Golf TV and the Sanford Power Golf Academy. And hitting good chip shots is not that difficult, and more importantly, if you understand a couple concepts I'm going to talk about here today, 3 of them specific, you're going to start doing that immediately. Now, hey, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Do me a favor, subscribe and tell your friends about US Golf TV. We've got some great content. We're putting it out every single week, and we are helping our fellow golfers all over the world, and we love hearing from you. So be sure to leave a comment also. I do my best to answer every single comment, every single question. Even if you don't agree with me, that's okay. I always encourage you because I want to hear from you as well. So let's talk about this. I first of all want to talk about what is some of the bad advice that's out there that's keeping us from hitting good quality chip shots. All right, number one, and we did a video on this, okay, and it has had over 3 million views. It's crazy. But number one is people are told to move their hands way in front of the golf ball. That is just bad advice in my opinion. I explain why I feel that way in one of our other videos that you could look at, but I just don't think it's good advice. Number two, people are told to move the ball way back in their stance. Another bit of advice that I just do not agree with that you've probably heard. And number three, I bet you've heard, is you got to hit down on the golf ball. Another bit of bad advice in my opinion. All right, so what should we be doing? Well, we're going to talk about the setup for success. We're going to talk about the concept of a mini circle and how that works. All right, and then we're going to talk about dancing with the golf club. Yeah, moving with the golf club and why that's important. So here we go. How do we set up for success? Well, number one, I've got my 58 here. I'm going to use that to demonstrate. You can use a variety of different clubs when you chip, and I suggest that. 58, maybe a gap wedge, maybe a pitching wedge, so you have a variety of different clubs that you can practice with. And the setup is really about the same for each one of those clubs, unless you're hitting a specialty type shot, like a high flop shot or even a bunker shot, a little bit different. But for today's purposes, the setup is the same for these different clubs that we're talking about. So number one is I definitely like the feet a little bit closer together. Now, what's most important though too is that your heels are close and your toes are flared out a little bit. And that's going to become important when we talk about the third concept of learning to dance or move with a golf club. So stay tuned for that. But heels in, toes out a little bit. Overall, feet are a little closer together than they would be certainly for a regular shot. All right. Number two is you got to have a little bit more weight on your lead foot. Okay. So if I'm set in here and this is, let's say 50-50, I'm going to definitely have more lean into my lead foot, which is my left foot for me. How much? Well, 70%, 75%, but just definitely more on your lead foot than on your trail foot. The next thing has to do with aim, and this is where a lot of people go wrong. They get their toes flared out a little bit, but they stay square to the target. I strongly suggest that your aim slightly open. So from down the line view, got my stance width, toes are out, okay? I'm leaning this way, but I'm also going to open up a little bit. So notice how I've taken my lead foot, my left foot, and brought it back slightly. Okay, this is going to help me do a lot of things that I need to do. We're going to talk about here the circle in just a second. All right. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is ball position. And typically, people talk about ball position where it is relative to their toes. But I want you to think about where's the ball relative to my heels. Okay, there's a difference. Front on view right here, right? When I'm set in here, this ball should be pretty much in the center to ever so slightly back of my heels. Not my toes, but my heels. Okay, and I think that's an important distinction. So when I'm looking at ball position from the face on view, like you're looking at me right now, I'm looking at where's the ball relative to the heels. And I want to see it center to ever so slightly back. And I want to see the shaft angle neutral to ever so slightly in front. All right, so that's how we set up for success. Feet closer, toes out, okay, aim a little bit open, ball centered to slightly back, a little bit of lean forward. Those are a couple of the concepts that we need to do there. All right, next thing is a circle, a half a circle. What do we mean by that? Well, when we're hitting a good chip shot, let me show it from down the line here. I'm going to give you a drill to work on this particular concept. But when I swing the club back, the club swings back and up. It swings back down the circle and back up the circle. So when I'm talking about a circle, I'm talking about the club working up, back down the circle, and back up. So once again, it works up the circle, back down the circle, and back up the circle. All right? And the reason that's important is that helps me get some angle of attack, or what we call hitting slightly down on the golf ball. All right? Now, when we're swinging on that circle, for the most part, the club swings on a relatively straight line. Now, it's not a perfectly 100% straight, okay? But it's relatively straight. Now, how do we practice that? Well, if I'm going to hit a chip shot here toward the net, I'm going to take my alignment rod. Now, most of you have an alignment rod, or you've used something like that. Sometimes the golf courses just have them, all right, on the driving range. But take it, put it on the target line. Okay, so this is just an extension of my target line. Now, typically when I do this, sometimes I'll put one on the back side of the ball, and sometimes I'll put one also on the front side of the ball. So when I'm set in here, when I swing the club back, I'm going to feel like the club head swings over the rod, back down the circle, and up on top of the other rod, or back up the other side of the circle. Okay, so it looks like this. It's right out here. Now, the reason I like this drill is because most people, when they struggle with their chipping, they drag the club too far inside. Okay, so they kind of drag it in here. So this is a really good visual for them to work on swinging the club straight back. And like I said earlier, technically the club does arc in a little bit, but from a practical standpoint, a concept standpoint, I want you to feel like the club head is in essence swinging straight back up the circle, straight back down the circle, back up the circle. All right, so that would be what we call the golf swing, the chipping motion, is in more of a mini circle. Now, I am going to share with you a 2-part drill series that I use for all my players, even my tour professionals, to kind of build in some of these concepts. All right, so number 3, we got to learn to dance with the golf club. What do we mean by dancing with the golf club? Well, what I mean is that chipping is rhythm, it's flow, it's tempo, all right? It's not a ballistic movement like a driver. Okay, it's not a very soft, smooth motion either like putting. It's kind of in between. It's a movement. It's like a nice dance where you're actually dancing with the golf club. So what I mean by that is that when I'm swinging this club, when I'm hitting a chip shot, okay, I'm actually moving with the club. Now, I'm not pivoting, okay, like I do with the driver, but I'm also not perfectly still with my feet and my body like I am when I putt. Kind of somewhere in between. So what would be the 2 extremes? Well, one would be lots of movement. Okay? That's what I might do more in a full swing or a ballistic movement. One would be no movement, where it's just stiff and rigid. Something in between would look like this. Okay? Now, the best way to practice this that I have found, okay, is just to simply, when you finish your swing, let me do it from face on here. When you hit a chip shot and finish, make sure that the butt end of the club is pointed at your belt buckle. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Boom, right there. Now, from down the line, looks like this. Okay, club's pointing at my belt buckle from face on. Okay, so if I'm moving with the club, I'm dancing with the club is going to start in neutral position, butt end of the club at my belt buckle, and it's going to finish in a neutral position. So that's a simple and easy way for you to work on that concept of moving and dancing with the golf club. So those are a couple of the 3 concepts that we talked about. So let's talk about 2 drills. What are 2 drills that we can do every single time that can help us improve our chipping? Well, the first drill is to just hit some chip shots off your lead foot. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate this. I'll even chip one right here towards the camera. I'm going to go ahead and just balance on my lead foot. Okay, and I'm just going to hit a little chip shot. Boom. Now what's going to happen when I do that is I'm going to feel any excessive movement back and through. Okay, so if I was to demonstrate that down the line, here I am, balance on my lead foot. Now the ball, I should tell you about this. The ball should be equal with your foot right here. Okay, people have asked that. Where should I position the ball, coach, when I do this? Put it right off your lead foot. Okay, right off my lead foot. Club's in a neutral position. Boom, hit a little chip shot. That's a great way to feel how you move with the golf club, but also how you create the right amount of stability. Drill number 2 that I would strongly suggest is hitting some chip shots with just your trail hand only, your dominant hand. That's my right hand. So let me demonstrate in the practice swing. I'm just going to let the club swing. Now when I do this, what's happening is, notice how I'm moving with the club? I use the word dancing with the golf club. Okay? When I do that, I'm going to go ahead and chip a ball here. So I'm set up. A little chip shot. Now that was actually pretty good. This drill is a little harder than it looks, but it's a great drill to help you feel using the bounce of the club. We've done a bunch of videos on the bounce of the golf club. You can check those out, but also learning to move and dance with the golf club. It's one of my favorite drills that I use all the time. So improving your chipping does not need to be complicated. You got to set up for success. You've got to get the club working up the circle, back down the circle, and back up the circle, and you got to learn to move and dance with the golf club. These 3 tips, these 3 suggestions can help you do just that.